Joanne, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Casey. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, Joanne, it's a treat to have you here with all of your experience, your decades and decades of experience in an area of retirement and life coaching. This is something that we work with every single day, and I've met more and more retirement coaches throughout the years. However, you're the first retirement coach that I've met that has been working virtually for as long as you have, even long before the age of COVID.
Exactly. 1989 when I started working virtually.
That's wild. 1989, you're working virtually. So my question is, how do you work virtually in 1989? We've got the introduction of the internet. So, how are you working virtually?
All on the phone.
All over the phone.
And I taught on the phone. I taught life coaches for years, just on at first on the telephone.
And how has the age of COVID, I know technology has greatly advanced over that period of time you've been doing this. How has COVID impacted the experience that you're having in your business?
Zoom has been, I worked on Skype before, but Zoom is probably even better than Skype. So I can even see the people I'm talking to even more clearly. So that's been a big addition.
Your business is probably booming faster than it has, not just because of demographic changes that we're having, where people have a need for retirement coaches. I didn't even know what a retirement coach was prior to starting this podcast. I've interviewed dozens and dozens, and it just seems like retirement coaches are coming out of the woodwork. So I want to get into that and what the difference is between these individuals. But I've got to imagine, you mentioned before we got started that you are now working with people more and more nationally, just all over the country.
And internationally as well.
Really?
Yeah, I have a client, and I had a client in Ecuador, in Australia.
Are those clients, so Ecuador, Australia, are those clients from the U.S. or are they residents of these other countries originally?
The one in Ecuador is from the U.S., the one in Australia, no. And his dream was, to get to Bali. And so we got him to Bali for a couple of years.
Is that right? So he moved to Bali for a period of time.
He did.
And he helped with that transition. So I want to know a little bit more about this individual before we get started, but why would this individual reach out to you? What did you do for them specifically?
Helped him, we define retirement as following your dream and finding your giftedness. And his dream had always been to go to Bali. And he wasn't quite sure how he could do it. So we worked together to get him there, to, all the steps that it took to get him there, to feel comfortable. And then once he got there, to coach him through. He had to find work and he had to do all those kinds of things. But he stayed there for a few years. So he decided to go back to college and to get another degree. So he went back to Australia.
How old was this individual? What was the biggest challenge they faced?
He was in his 50s at the time. I think the biggest challenge was, I think there was some initial cultural kinds of things, but just funding, to figure out how to get the funding to go there, how he could stay there and get a job and wanted to get the money to go there and then to get the money to stay there. I think though, and I think everybody has, whenever you coach somebody, they always, even in a career issue, there's always a personal issue that you have to get through. So things like, am I good enough? Can I do this? Can I make it happen? Am I strong enough personally to do this? All those kinds of issues always come out in any kind of coaching that you do.
Do you find that it's usually just more than anything else? And I know for myself, sometimes I just need somebody to talk to. The answers are already in here. I just need to hear myself say it.
Yeah. I don't tell people what to do. I had a client one time, she just, to understand that I don't give advice. That was a big aha for her, that you've got the answers. Let's figure out what they are and help you move forward with that. So, yeah, and coaching has there's two sides of the coin. They either say the client has the answer and you have to help them find it, or they may not have the answer and you can sort of help them figure out how to do that. Sometimes I call that the American Idol version. You might say, here's what some other people did, or here's some thoughts, now make it your own. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that is what is a mark of a good financial advisor as well. I often, advisors want to deliver advice, say this is exactly what you need to do. However, everybody's so unique and they already have the answer inside them. They just need a resource to bring those things to light. So as we get into this, I want to talk about life coaching, retirement coaching, the difference between the two, certifications. But first of all, you're the director of training at Retirement Options. What is Retirement Options? How would you describe that?
It's a training organization. We train non-financial retirement coaches. We train them to use two very useful assessments to help clients figure out what they want to do and who they want to be in retirement. It's a 10-week course, and there are two assessments that we train people around. And we have a fair amount of coaches who've gone through the programs. It's been around for about 15 years, I want to say. I helped the gentleman start the company. He does not own this company anymore, but he's somebody I knew. I knew he had these assessments. I'd used them prior to us starting this company with some big layoffs for Monsanto and Mallinckrodt. I'm in St. Louis. And even before that, my first retirement client I had in 1993. And then again in 96, these big layoffs came. And so I went to him and learned how to use his assessment. He had only one at the time. And I love them. Mm-hmm. I think what a beautiful foundation they are to help clients figure out, what I've worked on and what I perhaps need to work on to have a successful retirement.
Yeah, well, I think everybody wants to know where they stand in relation to others. And I think that was one of the neatest things about the assessment. It gives you a good judgment. Hey, this is where you stand. This is where the average individual stands. And I want to get deeper into those assessments. But before we get there, I think life coaches, they've been around for decades, right? I mean, life coaches have been around for a lot longer than a retirement coach. You were once a life coach. Now you're more of a retirement coach. You do a little bit of both. But I want to answer this question, and I think we can get into this utilizing a question that we had from one of our weekend reading subscribers. And that came from Lee Cooper, who said, how does one choose a life coach? Is it more of a gut feeling, or are there specific questions to ask the coach before deciding if they're right for you? And I would first want to ask, what is the difference between a life coach and a retirement coach? Are they one and the same? When do you seek one over the other?
That's a really good question. So a retirement coach does some life coaching, but they niche or niche, depending upon your part of the world, very specifically around the issues that retirees face. So if you're specifically thinking about retirement, I would really suggest that you take somebody who's been specifically trained to deal with those issues. But life coaches, everybody has personal issues that a coach can help with. And, coaching is very different than counseling, I believe. Having been trained in both, a coach is going to partner with you and walk with you, as opposed to a counselor who may look a little backward and really, it's more like this. Coaching is more like this, if my visual helps. Counseling is more like this, and coaching is more like this. I prefer this. I always... when I heard about coaching the first time was around 1996. And coaching works, I always liked working with people who who wanted to soar. But, I used to call them Disneyland. I always like to work with that kind of client. And that's what coaching, when I found that, I thought, I'm a coach much more than a counselor. I hope I've answered your question.
Well, when it comes, this is the first, and maybe I'm just naive to other specialties in the life coaching industry, but I don't know of other specialties. Are there other specialties in life coaching outside of retirement coaching?
Oh, sure. There's relationship coaches. There are leadership coaches. There are as many niches as you can dream of.
And what's so important about having someone that specializes in retirement specifically?
Because there are some really important issues that you're dealing with when you consider retirement. And you want somebody who's been trained and certified. And you can even niche within a niche in retirement coaching. So I have some retirement coaches, and I've trained quite a few over the last 15 years. So there are people who deal only with women who retire, or only with men, or only with executives, or only with, I had one coach who only dealt with retirees who had ADD, ADHD. You can even niche even further within retirement.
Right. Well, and I've trained many advisors over the years, and I can tell when one's going to be amazing, right? That there are some factors that I can tell just because I've trained so many on who is going to excel, who isn't. Do you see, and I imagine you see the same thing with all the retirement coaches you've trained throughout the years, what are some of the marks of a good retirement coach that you see as soon as you meet them and have those first maybe half an hour discussions together?
Well, I always say the best place to come from as a coach is a place of curiosity. So I want to make sure that the coach is coming from that place. The other place, believe it or not, is a place of love. And I think those are important things. How present are they? How much do they really allow the client to set the agenda? Any good coach is going to do that, as opposed to telling people, well, this is where you need to start because, you're not sure about that. We have to make sure that they go with the client's agenda.
It doesn't
Hopefully
it doesn't sound like a far cry from what you would look for in a really good financial advisor. You're starting to meet with them initially, or I'm training them initially, and the question goes along the lines: Are they listening? Are they paying attention? Do they exhibit, love and caring, and more importantly than anything else, as you said, I think the first thing you said is the most important. You said curiosity. Are they curious? Are they asking really good questions?
Powerful questions. That's one of the things we teach, how to ask great, powerful questions, because those just sort of bubble up as you're being present. We actually give them a great list of powerful questions. Some I use with everybody, but also as a good coach, you're going to listen, be present, and those questions just bubble up out of nowhere. Sometimes you think,
well, we cannot deliver a good answer without receiving a great question. And so I have to ask, what is your favorite question to ask?
How can you be creative with change?
Being creative with change.
How can you be creative with change?
And
one of my favorite powerful questions.
Take me a little deeper there. What kind of answers would you get from a question like that? What do you hope to
receive? There are a lot of people, Casey, who aren't good with change, including me. But when you put the word creative next to change, I think it explodes. It's electric. It makes you think out of the box. My coaching business is called New Perspective Coaching. And it really gives you that different perspective when you think about, creative and change. Well, that actually sounds exciting rather than scary in terms of dealing with change.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like that. We need to be able to be creative and deal with that change. I recently had my wife tell me a way that she likes to think about this that she heard from another podcast she listened to. I just thought it was wonderful that we're dancing through our changes in life that we experience, and we have to change our dance every once in a while. Sometimes we're doing the rumba, and sometimes we're doing the tango, and then we're just on the grind, right?
So I'd be
And I like
curious
thinking
for
through
the
that.
client, what would be your retirement dance?
Yeah, I think that's just such a great question. What would be your dance in retirement, and how is it going to change over time? But I like looking backwards too. How has that dance changed throughout life? What would you say your dance currently is? So I like that question. I think it's nice, it's creative, and it helps you understand how they're going to adapt to change.
Because when you think about retirement, more change during retirement than any time in your life.
Yeah, well, and I think that is why it's so important to have a good coach. But do you find that everyone needs a retirement coach? Are there certain individuals that need it more than others? Is it the ones that struggle with change versus the ones that are more adaptable?
Even the ones who are adaptable, I think, do well with a coach. Because one of the things a coach can do is really help, is challenge you out of the box that you're in even further. Take you to a place you maybe never even dreamed of before. So I think it's great for everybody.
Well, and back to Lee Cooper's question, what specific questions should someone ask a retirement coach before deciding if they're right?
Well, you need to have that conversation to see if you connect with that person. I think that's really, really important. And asking about, their experience, I think is important to know. Asking about where they were trained, asking about some of their successes, asking about what they think is some of the hurdles that people face. Again, I just think it's really important to feel like you connect with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Well, it sounds like what Lee said is true. He said, is it more of a gut feeling than anything else? And it sounds like it's more of a gut
I
feeling
think
than
that's
anything
part
else.
of it. I don't think that's all of it, but I think that you have to go with your comfort level.
Well, and you're also looking for someone that has an area of specialty, maybe deeper than just retirement in general. And you mentioned that some specialize, in ADD, and they just keep going deeper down this rabbit hole. We had a question from our Facebook Live audience that what came from Barack, and Barack said, "Hey, thanks for your question, Barack." He said, "Do you know of any retirement coaches that specialize in federal employees?" And that begs the question of, I think it can be confusing separating a retirement coach from a retirement advisor. I feel like that question from Barack is going, well, I need someone that specializes in federal employees to understand federal employee benefits, et cetera. Do they need to find someone that specializes in that area when it comes to being a retirement coach? Maybe you can take us deeper here.
Well, if they want to know about the money side, then they need the advisor, not the retirement coach, because typically the money side's not our specialty. But I do believe that there might be individuals, let's say in DC, who have worked with a lot of employees.
Well, and maybe that goes to the experience question, right?
Yeah.
You're asking good questions from these individuals.
Yeah. I mean, I just recently started working with some people in the not-for-profit world. And I hadn't really worked with clients in that realm, but the retirement issues are still the same. What do I do next? Who do I want to be? What do I want my legacy to be? What am I going to do in terms of work? Where am I going to live? I mean, those are the kinds of things that frequently come up.
So it's important to ask what their specialty is, which can really dig us into their experience. If we're a federal employee and that's important to us, maybe we want to know they've worked with federal employees, or if we're
possibly
in
but
501c.
I don't know that. I think just knowing the retirement work in general certainly can be helpful. I don't know. Not everybody niches that narrowly.
And it's
And
not
they're still
necessarily
good
important.
coaches.
Sure. Well, and what makes a good coach above all else, as you said, is you said you want to make sure that they're certified. And I've got a question here from another one of our weekend reading subscribers, Gary Wenner, who said, my questions center around whether there are certifications for retirement coaches. He has a second part to this question that I want to get to here in a little bit, but you have the Retirement Options Certified Coaches, ROCC. There's a number of different designations out there, certifications out there. What's the importance of a certification, and how do we know if it's a good one, a worthy one or not? And I want to relate this back to the financial realm. I have this list of about 50 designations that you could get done in about 30 days without an exam, and a board exam. And you could simply read a book and they give you the letters. I think there's ones that are really hard. You could get your CFP, takes you a couple of years to accomplish that. You have to have years of experience and education, but there's others that don't have those same requirements. Not all designations are created equal. Is the same thing true in the retirement coach realm? There's some are more, they really are meaningful, where others aren't. How do you vet them?
Well, I mean, there are other schools out there that do retirement training. So I would make sure that they had some very specific retirement training. And not just say that they've done a lot of that work, that they've gone to the trainings and that they've passed like you said, passed the exam and done the work. So,
and what sets,
anybody can hang up a shingle and say, hey, I'm a retirement coach.
Right.
But they, they had any coach training, mm-hmm. Not just retirement coach training, but coach training in general as well.
Yeah.
There are several designations of just in general coach training. That's probably a place to look at, as well as that niche in retirement.
Well, and I don't want to put you in a position here. So if this is a question you're willing to answer, then please do. Otherwise, I understand why you might not. Your designation that you train on is the ROCC. What are some other designations that are out there, and how would you compare the difference between them?
Well, there are several other retirement schools out there. They offer designations. The difference that we have is that we specifically have assessments that we use. And those assessments are really, I think, the key to our working with our clients.
That's kind of a turnkey, right? I mean, it's good education. You get the education that gives you all the things that you need to know in order to be a good retirement coach. But then you have these tools that make it somewhat turnkey, where you can have someone walk them through this process. It's a process, right? It's a process that you're training on. And I don't know that all retirement coaches have a process. Some are just going in and having this discussion, and that cannot lead to the best result.
The process is good. Not only when in this retirement options do we have the assessments, but each assessment comes with 30 plus exercises and at least for every individual piece of the process, powerful questions that we can use.
Well, and as
really get to the core of what this client wants and needs to do moving forward.
As you've coached some of these individuals, what kind of changes have you seen in these individuals as they enter the program and they exit the program? Any light bulbs that are going off for them, or just general changes or thought processes that you've been able to improve upon?
Clients is what you're meaning.
The coaches that you're actually training.
Oh, okay. Well, any kind of coach training, you're not the same person coming out that you were going in. I think not only do they learn about issues for themselves, but their clients. For example, just trying to think of somebody who really shifted, somebody who just thought, is this what I want to do? And then they get through it and say, this is really what I want to do. And I love this kind of I love this work, because the neat thing about retirement coaching is you get to do a little bit of everything, because there might be career issues. 80% of our clients want to keep working in some capacity. So you have to deal with that. Relationship issues. Then you might have a group of people who are single, and that's a whole nother group of issues. Where am I going to live is the number 2 question in retirement. So helping clients figure out those kinds of things. But definitely students come out, I think, knowing themselves even better and get excited about what they can do with a client.
Mona, do you see a common thread amongst these individuals? As I've interviewed many retirement coaches many times, I find that they became certified, or they went down this retirement coaching realm because they were interested in their own retirement. They were trying to improve their own retirement, not necessarily in it for the money. It was an interest and a post-career change.
Could be. I mean, I can talk about myself maybe for a second, like why I went this route. My dad died when he was 50. I was 19 at the time. And our last conversation that we ever had, he said, I can't die. I haven't done everything I want to do in my life. And, I can still see him sitting next to me. I was 19. And that really has fueled my work for years and years. So I don't want anybody I work with to be in that position to say, hey, I'm not ready to go because I haven't done everything I want to do in my life. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that really informs a lot of what I do. And I think other people who are helpers find this work really compelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've trained a lot of even wealth advisors and financial advisors who want to do the holistic piece of, not just this, but it's not just about the money alone. They can't make decisions on just money alone. There's all these other factors that come into play.
Well, and I think that's a good lead into the second part of Gary's question, which is along with what happens if directions from a retirement coach potentially conflict with directions from your financial planner. And so I'm going, well, when you just want to find a financial planner that acted as a retirement coach at the same time, do you want a financial planner that's acting as your retirement coach? Is it important that there's a separation with those individuals?
Many of the ones that I've known over the years didn't want to do the work. Even the ones I trained just wanted the information, and they said, here's the client, you work with them. But some financial planners, I think, have the people skills, the coaching skills, if you will, to do all of it. But no, I don't think there are many of them who really want to take on all of it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's what you have found as well.
Oh, I think that's true. I think in general, financial advisors are numbers people. Yeah, but the best financial advisors are people first and number people second. And they're really invested in the lives of the families that they work with. They want to go deep. They want to be a coach. They don't just want to be, a financial advice delivery mechanism. They want to be a coach. And
my concern is maybe they haven't been trained to be a coach, because that's a huge part of all this, I think, as well.
Well,
you need to have that training.
It sounds like something that many financial advisors have been doing for years, just naturally, right? They've been acting in this capacity. Maybe it's not many, but there's advisors out there that have been doing more coaching for many years. Now I think there's kind of becoming this separation where, hey, you need a retirement coach and you need a financial advisor, and it's important that I think it's important that they work together at the same time. But have you ever run into a situation where there's conflicting advice between a retirement coach and a financial advisor?
No, because again, I'm not giving advice. I'm not telling them what to do with their money. I'm helping them figure out their dream and their life and their life planning, not their money planning. No, certainly they coincide to some extent, but I don't have that
Well,
personally.
well, and I think, again, that just goes back to the confusion that there's all these different labels out there, even for financial advisors, right? You have retirement planners, financial advisors, investment advisors, brokers, and what do they all do? And then you have these retirement coaches that are out there at the same time. Retirement coaches, and you said very clearly, are not there to deliver financial advice. They're there to coach you on the non-financial aspects of retirement.
You know what my dream is, Casey? That these organizations, these wealth advisor organization, that they have a retirement coach on staff.
Mm-hmm.
That is I think would be beautiful.
Well, maybe we can get you to relocate out here to Fort Wayne from St. Louis.
But,
The climate's about the same.
We work virtually. We don't need to be there.
Yeah, well, I have the same dream. I've wondered about that, because there's certain advisors on our team, as you said, that they're numbers people, right? They don't really want to get into the fluffy stuff. Yeah, and then there's other ones that want to dive into the fluffy stuff and stay there for hours on end. And, it might be better if we just had one person on staff that's all that they did was the retirement coaching element, rather than having some that do a blend of both and trying to change the other ones that aren't really comfortable with those conversations, trying to force them into that position.
Or
so
work together
I love that.
To do it.
Yes, I love that concept. I hope that that's the next evolution in retirement planning as well. And that's our push. That is why we call, that's why our tagline is retire with purpose is, I think that's the non-financial aspects are what's really missing in the financial advice industry. And many people are stepping into retirement that shouldn't be stepping into retirement in the first place. Advisors are doing them a disservice, and they should be working on the purpose elements first. And that's what a lot of your assessments help with. And so I want to hit on a couple of those assessments here. You have the life options profile, the retirement success profile. You're also going to be offering a discount for these as well for the listeners, which we will tell you about here in a little bit. Can you tell us what the difference is between these two? What's the life options profile? What's the retirement success profile? What are they and what's their purpose?
So let's start with the retirement success profile. It's been around longer than the life options profile, and it looks at the 15 factors necessary for a successful retirement. Looks at them in several different ways. Looks at, of the 15 factors, how much you want, need, or value each one. And that's the first place. The second place is how much you've done already. And then we can compare the expectation scores minus the present behavior scores gives us a variance score, which the first two are normative measures, comparing you to other people, like you mentioned earlier. The variance score is comparing yourself to yourself, and it's sort of a gap analysis measure, saying, where are the big gaps between what you say you want and what you say you've already done. And so the difference is the retirement success profile is longer and a little more academic, if you will, and a little more psychologically based. The life options profile is shorter and sweeter, and I say it's sexier because it's in color. It gives us a color designation of where people are. And it expands some on the retirement success profile, like in the health and wellness area, in a few other areas. It sort of brings more out for that. These were meant to be complementary and not competing assessments. So on occasion, I might give both. It depends upon what the client's presenting issue is. For example, I had a client, years ago, who came to me and said, my two biggest issues are how to get my adult children off the payroll so I can retire. I think his kids were 28 and 30, and he was still supporting them. And then the other issue was, where are we going to live, which again is the number two issue in retirement. And so those are things that the life options profile looks at a little more closely. It actually has a dimension, as we call them, on residents on that assessment. And it also looks at a little more dealing with adult children, as opposed to the retirement success profile doesn't deal with residents and looks at dependent care issues, which can be a little bit elder care, child care, even things like aging pet care can be an issue for people in retirement. And if they want to go somewhere and they have an older pet and they think, oh gosh, I can't leave this pet with somebody, that has held people back in retirement.
Well, we have a dependent dog ourselves.
Yes, yes. Both of these are looking at things like, both of them share life meaning. Both of them share things like work benefits, we call it. There are 5 things that you've got to figure out when you retire. And that's purpose and money and structure and status and socialization. And really interesting with those, that if you don't know how you can do it or don't think you can, either you're going to delay your retirement, or if you have to retire, it can lead to somebody feeling really lost.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the 28 and 30-year-old. I want to know, did he get the kids off the payroll?
He did.
and I want to, what was the strategy? How did you help do that?
Well, a lot of support.
This is a common issue. So.
Yeah, a lot of support, a lot of planning and thinking about how having those conversations. I do a lot of role play with clients. I like to call real play instead of role plays because they're real situations. I just did a lot of real plays with one of my clients who didn't want to move to where the kids thought she should move. She didn't want to go. So yeah, helping him really kind of ease into those conversations, saying, you know, I can't do this anymore, and you all have got to do this on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it didn't happen overnight.
Well,
But
and he may not have had a third party that was completely impartial to have that kind of practice conversation with.
yeah, I mean, to practice, I think, is really important for a lot of situations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I used to teach years ago. I taught assertiveness training, and you know, the number one thing that the hardest little bitty word in the world to say is no.
Mm-hmm.
And so people think that the world's going to blow up if you say no. And once you start saying it and find out that it doesn't, it's mind blowing for a lot of people.
Yeah, 30 years of saying yes, and now we have to make the shift to no. It has to be a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
It's a bit of renewal.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of kids are moving back now because of what's happening in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and the world of retirement is really changing right now because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I either have clients who are bored, and I had one client who, she was really bored, and she decided to do Christmas in July, decorated the inside and the outside of her house, sent cards, sent presents. And I mean, it really helped her get through July and that feeling of boredom. And I had another client who I started working with before the pandemic. And then when that hit, she had work from home, and it helped her make the decision to retire because she loved being at home. She loved not having to go to the office. She loved doing, working in her garden and doing other things and volunteering virtually on boards. So
what I found is the pandemic has really accelerated retirement for many individuals, or at least a new career altogether.
Yeah.
And I love what you say, in the retirement success profile at the top, it says retirement is, formerly called retirement. Now it's known as renewal. And, why the word renewal? It's been called so many different things, rewirement, and then you have retirement, you have the second act, you have the third act.
Nobody likes the word retirement, but we can't come up with a better word. We just haven't done it yet. It's like helping people go on the reinvention tour. The renewal, I think, is taking everything that you loved, even thinking about things that you used to do and that you couldn't do while you were working that you can do again. You can renew old friendships. You can renew renew your soul just about.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that in terms of blossoming again and rebounding and all this and coming up. I know somebody during the pandemic who started 2 new careers. He's still working and he's in his 50s, but he can't travel like he used to. He started a food business and gave all the money he made from that to the local food bank. And now he's going to try and get this food item he's made into stores. And he started building furniture, which he'd never done before. And so, he's looking ahead, I think, at when he will retire. And maybe he'll retire much sooner than he had planned because he's got these new careers. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean because the world is falling apart that you can't be resilient and find your own renewal at any age or time.
Well, and many of those things that he's doing, he may have had a passion for. They may be part of his values that come out of years past that he's just lost touch with, that you've helped pull out of that individual.
And I think that's important too in terms of values. And I know your company is really big on values, that our values change as we get older. I mean, I just think about my own values. My family came first. And now that, I'm mostly an empty nester, that has changed somewhat. I don't have to put as much attention on my 23-year-old. So what's important to you? What value? What have you, and look at dreams. Did you have a dream and it kind of got deferred, if you will, because you worked, because of whatever? I had a client one time who came to me and he said, "This is my last shot. I always wanted to be a meteorologist." And he didn't want to be on TV. He just wanted to do that work. His parents didn't support it. His former wife didn't support it. And he said, now is it. If I don't do it now, I probably won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
And I also had people who, in golf, who always wanted to work in the world of golf and again wasn't supportive, or music. Those are a lot of things as people look towards their retirement or get into their retirement. What kind of careers did they always want to do? Or did they have a hobby that they left? Or I had a client who was looking at new hobbies to get into in retirement, and he was always curious about glass blowing. So he went and learned how to do that, and he loved it. So, there's so many opportunities, and I love the word renewal.
Yeah, well, sometimes we just need to try. We just need to do some low-cost probes, as Dean Nawalny shared with us
Experiment.
in a previous
I like
episode.
to put clients in experiment mode.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful opportunity.
Because there's a difference between commitment and trying. I listen for that when I coach people. Because if somebody's in trying mode, they're looking for the back door. They're not committed typically. Mm-hmm. And so those are things that I can, as a coach, I can say, when I hear you say this, I'm not sure I hear your commitment. And, commitment words are very different than trying words. Commitment words are choose or I decided. So those are the kinds of things we listen for as coaches.
That's an important
Shoulds.
insight.
Shoulds are big ones too. I should do this. Well, should comes from someone or something else.
Right. Yep. And Chris Smith shared with us in one of our past episodes about shoulds and being careful. Many of us have been doing things we should do our entire lives. And retirement's a great opportunity to stop, in his words, getting should on. And in your bio, it says that you help people clarify their values, discover their passions, find their life purpose, and get clear about their goals. Can you, and maybe you can't, maybe you can, but I think it's always, for me, I look at values, passions, purpose, goals, meaning, what's the difference between all of these? How do you differentiate between values, passion, purpose, and goals?
So values,
one at a time.
Okay. Values are things that we believe in terms of, is it my family? So I used to, when I did career work years ago, if the number one values of the client was freedom, for example, and then they say, I'm going to get a desk job. That doesn't work typically. So you have to know what's important to you. Years ago, I had a values card sort. People would say yes, no, and maybe of their values. And then there are great things that you can do now for values. But what are the things that really kind of move you or are important to you? Purpose is more around, we find meaning by pursuing purpose. And that often means by helping other people or giving back on a more global level. So that's how I think about purpose. What was your next one that you wanted me to look at?
How about passions?
Passion. What do you get excited about? One of my favorite powerful questions is a little on the other side of that, but what do you do like breathing? That's breathing. What do you do that 2 hours go by and you look up and you think, oh my God, where did the time go? What do you get excited about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some might call that the flow state or your unique ability. The one thing that you do better than anyone else that you just lose track of time. And then we come to goals. So what are goals and how do you set good goals in retirement?
So like my client who wanted to go to Bali, that was his goal, or the goal is I want to work on a board. So how do I go about doing that? Or I want to volunteer, or I want to, and clutter is a huge issue in retirement. I want to clean up the clutter in my house or in my life.
Yeah.
Those can be, I typically do 90-day goals with clients. And we look at that and we can do some longer goals. Some goals are going to take more than 90 days, but what are the smaller goals that you can do? And then the bigger goals that might take longer. Like I eventually want to sell my house, or I want to, I'm trying to think of what some of the goals are. I want to relocate to where my kids are, or, all kinds of things in terms of goals, but goals have to be very measurable. They have to be doable in terms of, look, I had a client who said, I don't like to say the word lose because I'm big on language. I want to process off 25 pounds. Well, so, that's a pretty typical goal, but you have to have some ways that you're going to make that happen. What are you going to reevaluate in terms of your life and how you're you're eating and what you're eating. And for example, does that help you? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Well, there was one thing that you said you utilize a tactic when coaching clients called the perspective game. Is that useful in here? What is the perspective game? Is that like your real playing?
So I can give you an example. The perspective game is I had a client she was having a lot of fear. She got laid off from her job. And so the perspective game is you take the word fear and it begins with an F. And I said, what's another word that you can shift your perspective that whenever you feel the fear, it's going to help you change that mindset. She thought about it in a minute and she said, footwork.
Footwork.
So every time that she felt the fear, it meant that she had footwork to do. She had something to do. Or you can take stumbling blocks and make them stepping stones. That's the perspective game. It's a fun game to play.
Yeah. No, that's good. I haven't heard that one before. You're taking the first letter of whatever that negative thing is, and you're just flipping it so you have an automatic place to go every time that it creeps into your life.
I do a visualization with a lot of my clients too, particularly around, you can do it around anything, but around retirement issues that they're having in retirement, something very specifically that's frustrating them. And I have them go through and feel it. How is it manifesting physically? And then I say, okay, and we're going to take that same situation, and now it's fascinating. And watch them shift and really look at it in a completely different way. That's a lot of fun, and it's very powerful.
Well, it has to be really rewarding for you as well, I would imagine. It has to be the most rewarding part of the job is watching people make these shifts in their lives and live such a more meaningful life, or bringing so much more meaning into their life. And as we come to the close here, you wrote a book called Out of the Box: Retirement, Creative Ideas, Role Models, and New Possibilities. Can you just share that with us? Why did you write the book, and I think why that
I'm
title?
a co-author in this book. I'm not the only author in this book. I wrote a chapter in this book, so I just want to be really clear about that.
And when it comes to Out of the Box Retirement, what does that title mean to you?
Oh, I love that title because that's where you want a lot of people to think out of the box. I did a speech a number of years ago, think big, out of the box, and have a ball. So, people could get blinders, if you will, and getting the new frame around it if you can. I think is really important. I wrote, the chapter is about a specific client that I worked with who retired when she was 70. And one of her biggest issues in retirement was that her husband had died 12 years earlier and they had planned to retire together. So she initially came and said, I can't make any decisions without him. Now, this woman was a corporate attorney who we had to do a lot of really thinking out of the box in terms of, how in the past did you make those decisions at work? And how can you do that now without him, because he's not here? And it's about really working with her from looking at all the specific issues she had and the goals that she had and how we worked through them together. One of the things, she did have a clutter issue, and one of the things she had never done was clean out her husband's desk. And she wanted to do that. And we did what I call a tackle it day, where it's a whole day of coaching. We met in the morning, we talked about the issues and her apprehensions, and how she wanted to do this. And her underlying thing about whatever she did, she wanted it to be fun. So thinking out of the box, I said, how can you make this fun? Because, it was gut-wrenching. Some of it was. She said, I'm going to make it a dance party. I'm going to play my music, and we talked about dancing earlier. And she said, I'm going to dance my way through it. And so we met again. So that was like at 8:00 in the morning. We met again at noon, kind of went through what she had come across, and she'd come across some things that he'd written in, and that was difficult. But the rest of it got easier and easier as she went on, and she again tried to have fun with it. And she was able to do it, and she hadn't done this for 12 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. And if you'd like to get a copy of the book, we're going to give it away now as we close. If you'd like to get a copy of Out of the Box Retirement, Creative Ideas, Role Models, and New Possibilities, all you have to do is write an honest review for the podcast over on iTunes. You can do that at retirewithpurpose.com. Just go to the podcast page. Right at the top, it says leave a review. Leave a review and shoot us an email at info@howardbailey.com with your iTunes username and a copy of your review, and we will send you out a copy of Out of the Box Retirement. And we also have another special offer for Joanne here. Joanne has offered a 20% discount on her assessments, both of those assessments, the Retirement Success Profile and the Life Options Profile. Maybe you've already written the review and you go, well, I'd still like to get the profiles done. I'd still like to get those assessments. Well, then just shoot us an email at info@howardbailey.com. We will set you up, connect you over here with Joanne, and make sure you get the discount and are able to access those assessments, whether you've written the review or not. Again, those reviews, if you haven't written them, they help us get noticed over on iTunes. So we truly appreciate you helping us get the word out about all these non-financial aspects of retirement in conjunction with many of the financial aspects that we discuss. Joanne, thank you so much for joining us for the podcast. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you. And if people want to find me, it's Joanne at newperspectivecoaching.com. And if they're interested in becoming a retirement coach, go to retirementoptions.com. Hopefully, maybe we've enthused some people today to become a retirement coach.
I love it. I can't wait to see how many of the families that are fans of ours that end up going down the retirement coach realm. We'll make sure to include links to all of those different things right in the show notes that you can catch at retirewithpurpose.com.
Thank you for having me. I just wanted to say it's been great, and I really appreciate your time and your interest.
Well, thank you, Joanne. Until next time.
Take care.